user whose identity was unknown and who was discussing the planning of a mass shooting with threats nonspecific in nature. This is the FBI's statement to the press. And that the FBI continued to work this assessment investigation to identify the name and location of the user up until September 10th, 2025, which was the day of the tragedy. Can you provide us some clarity on what were the impediments to finding, the account user, and maybe describe in greater detail the FBI's work in that regard?
Generally speaking, yes, because I know even though the shooter's deceased, the investigation we're not done.
Sure.
And so the impediments to finding these individuals, and you highlight a great point. We had 2 huge tragedies in the span of days in this country. The school shooting in Evergreen, Colorado being one of them. And proactively going out onto these social media platforms, which are so large, is our biggest impediment. And we need to rely on the service providers. There's actual legislation, I can't remember the name of it, that's up for renewal, which will, and I think at the end of the month, which gives service providers the ability to report that information in from their end without liability. We need that to continue, because while the FBI has so many people and the police are great at doing it, there's just too many platforms to cover down on.
Well, I appreciate that, Director Patel, and I think we're certainly, I'm interested in continuing this conversation, because I think the reporting suggests that there's a pattern, and that ultimately we want to make sure that law enforcement is able to prevent this kind of tragedy from happening in the future. I have a question. It's not meant as a gotcha question, so it just frame it there. But it is in regards to some reporting around a periodic transaction report that you had filed earlier, this year. So this is in July, pursuant to the ethical obligations as a senior executive official. You remember filing that in July?
Yes.
Yeah, so in that report, as best as I can surmise, you disclosed that you divested, $100,000 or more in a variety of different stocks, which I presume was pursuant to the ethics agreement that you negotiated with the Department of Justice. In that same report, there's a disclosure regarding purchases of two different transactions. So between $15,000 to $50,000 in a national coffee house chain, and between $50,000 to $100,000 in a semiconductor company on May 9th and May 12th. Are those transactions that you're doing personally, or are these through a stockbroker, or are these transactions that you're handling yourself?
So how they happen is I submit proposals under DOJ guidance to say, hey, I would like to trade this or that, and they run their review, and the FBI runs a review, and then they come back and say yes or no, and then I make the transaction.
Is there a reason that you decided to make the purchases into those 2 companies?
Generally speaking, before I got this job, I was, trading stocks, but not a lot like most people, and I just follow certain industries, and I thought they would be a good investment.
So the reason why I ask, right, because you had divested in other companies, and I presume that wasn't because there were actual conflicts. It's just that you wanted to avoid an appearance of impropriety.
It was both.
Both, but not all of the companies were conflicts.
Whatever they make
divested from.
I don't make the call, they make the call.
Sure. Yeah. I guess my point would be, the reason why I ask this, why I said it's not a gotcha question, I have for years led an effort here in Congress to try to ban members of Congress, senior executive officials, from trading stocks. And it's bipartisan in nature. We're working really hard to get that done, Republicans and Democrats. And you can understand, I think, given your role, given the nature of the position that you hold as the leader of the largest law enforcement agency in our country, that divesting entirely, not doing day trading now, I think would be something that would be in the interest of the American people. So I just would hope you would consider that, and that moving forward, that perhaps not purchasing stocks in individual companies, I would think would be something that would be worth pursuing.
Gentleman's time is...
I'm happy to give the witness an opportunity to answer.
Thank you. I'll work with you on it.
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Patel, for being here today. Newly declassified documents confirm that the intelligence community under President Barack Obama knowingly relied on unverified and fraudulent evidence to manufacture a false claim that Russia, in fact, meddled in the 2016 election. Is there more to be done to uncover the depths and origins of the Russian collusion hoax?
There is, and we're doing it.
Why should Americans still care about that, Director Patel?
Everybody wants to talk about a weaponized bureaucracy. When we put out the facts about a weaponized bureaucracy, not because I said so, but because we found the FISA documents, because we found the 302s and the 1023s, then it becomes a political football. My job is to continue to put out that information and let the American public read it for themselves when I'm lawfully able to do so. And that's been my commitment on any subject, Russiagate or otherwise. Wherever the law allows me to do it, I will do it.
You know, when I first came in 2020, the number one concern as I was doing town halls was the weaponization of the government against the American citizen. And so, are there things that you're doing, structural reforms that implementing so that the FBI cannot be weaponized again, whether it's against President Trump or future elected presidents?
It shouldn't be weaponized against anyone. And the structural reform is simple. If you're going to go after a political individual or someone seeking political office, there has to be a grounded basis in law and fact to open up a criminal investigation. And if there's not, the investigation isn't even opened. And I've also gone back and reviewed other cases that were opened in prior administrations related to public officials, and we've closed a number of them because we felt that some of these actions were weaponized on either side of the aisle. I felt it wholly inappropriate for the FBI to be playing umpire and referee amongst these decision makers when there was no factual or legal basis to continue those investigations, so I shut them down.
And I think that's so desperately needed because we need to restore trust in law enforcement and certainly in the DOJ and the FBI so that the American people don't fear the very government that's supposed to protect them. And so thank you for doing that. On August 11th, you released to the committee documents concerning leak investigations that began in 2017. You believe these leaks were accidental or were they intentional in order to influence public opinion against President Trump?
When I can publicly make a final decision on that, either through a recommendation of charging that the DOJ makes or findings that I have, I'm able to do so, but they're still not complete.
Why did the FBI under Director Comey want to undermine the Trump administration?
I don't know. You'll have to ask him.
Think it might have been political? How will Director Comey be held accountable for his leaks and classified information concerning the Russian collusion hoax?
Well, anyone. Doesn't matter what you did before or what seat you were in. If you leak classified information, that's illegal. And we will investigate it fully. And if we can bring enough evidence to recommend charges to the Department of Justice, we will. But as you know, in these leak investigations, it's very difficult to produce the information necessary. We know leaks happen. They literally happen every week. It's one of the most destructive things to this country. Media receives classified information beneficial to one side or the other. I'm a fan of none of it, and I want to shut all of it down. And we need to bring some real cases to deter individuals from doing that, and that's my focus.
What was Comey's role in creating the ICA?
You know, speaking from my memory, as the head of the FBI, he was charged under then Director Brennan, and Director Clapper and the other IC elements to come in with the NSA, CIA, FBI, and ODNI and put together a collection of information on how the information sort of surrounding Russiagate came together. So he represented the FBI in that.
Was former Director of CIA, John Brennan, he's denied that the Steele dossier was used in creating the ICA. Is that true?
Well, it's, without commenting on him, the FISA has been released, and the dossier was in the FISA. It was in 4 FISAs. So I'll let the public decide.
Well, former Director Brennan actually denied repeatedly that he pushed for the Steele dossier to be included in the ICA. Is that true?
I'll let his testimony speak for itself, but then Deputy Director Andy McCabe also testified to the House Intelligence Committee, which has now been declassified, that were there no Steele dossier, there would have been no FISA.
Well, my time's getting close, but let me tell you this, sir, and well, my colleague from Texas said, thank you for the job you're doing. You're making the American people safe. You're restoring trust in these agencies that so many of us had lost trust in. So thank you for the work you're doing. That thin blue line, you're doing a fine job, and we want to let you know we appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you.
Lady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, for coming here today. And actually, thank you for your response to my colleague from New York who asked you earlier about violent extremism. And you said that there is violent extreme ideology on both sides. And I think you actually alluded to that same statement yesterday in the Senate. So I too have some questions I'd like to ask you. These are not gotcha questions, and just deny, please, what you deem to be false. So Dylan Roof, who followed white supremacist propaganda murdered 9 black parishioners in Charleston in 2015. Do you deny this?
I'm sorry. Dylan Ruth?
Roof?
Can you give me some more information?
You're head of the FBI, you probably know this. If you don't know, that's fine.
If you can give me a reminder, I've got a lot in front of me.
It was national news. Robert Bowers murdered 11 Jewish worshipers in Pittsburgh in 2018.
I do remember that.
And it was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack. So do you admit that that happened?
I'm not saying the other thing didn't happen. I'm just asking for a little information.
Patrick Cruces, who posted a manifesto about a Hispanic invasion, walked into a Walmart in El Paso, Texas in 2019 and began firing. He murdered 23 people that day, and the youngest was 15. Do you admit or deny that that happened?
I'll take your presentation as accurate.
All right, well, I have to say all of these cases have been adjudicated. As I said, they are not gotcha questions. These incidents were national news. And as director of the FBI, you have access to all of this information. So in 2022, Peyton Grendon walked into a supermarket in a black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, and started shooting. He murdered 10 people that day. And on September 10th, your friend Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Tyler Robinson has been taken into custody and charged, but also on that day, Desmond Holley, a 16-year-old white male, shot and injured 2 students at a high school in Colorado before killing himself. And according to the Anti-Defamation League, he had a fascination with mass shootings and white supremacy. So do you admit to, deny these facts?
Those happened.
Okay. Your predecessor, former FBI Director Christopher Wray, said that one of the most dangerous concerns is that racially motivated violent extremism, especially white supremacists, has been the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism cases and is responsible for the most lethal attacks over the last decade. Do you admit or deny, A, that he said this?
I'll let the record reflect that. Whatever he said was what he said.
All right, and do you agree?
That there is racially motivated crimes being committed in America, yes.
Yes, especially white supremacists, which is the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism. I'm glad that you said this. So last week, President Trump was asked if there were extremists on both the left and the right. He was actually asked this by Fox and Friends, and his exact words were, "I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. The radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy." Do you agree with the president?
I don't speak for the president. The president speaks for himself.
Do you agree with the president?
On what matter?
On the question that I just asked, do you agree with his statement about the radical left?
That there's ideology that's driving violence on both sides? Yes, that's what he acknowledged.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Okay.
But I'm glad that you're saying that and actually creating some separation between you and the president. And I'm glad that you
That's literally
are
not what happened. He said
acknowledging
both.
that there is violent extremism on both sides. What's interesting is that the research arm of the Department of Justice, the National Institute of Justice, do you know what that is?
I'm familiar with them.
Okay, great. It is the research arm of the Department of Justice, and it published an article in 2024 devoted to domestic radicalization, violent extremism, and terrorism. I have it. It's interesting that it's no longer on the website. It has been scrubbed, but I ask these questions because what makes a strong, qualified director of any business, of any household, of the FBI, what makes a reputable prosecutor is not lapdog loyalty, but a commitment to the creed that evidence is agnostic and that the evidence will lead you to making the right decisions. And your job, no one's job is to like the data or the evidence, it is to collect it. That is how you gain trust. And Mr. Chair, I would like to enter into the record, if I may. White supremacist group stands by racist ideology with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Dylan Roof, the radicalization of the alt-right and ritualized racial violence.
Without objection.
Thank you. Another article, how Robert Bowers went from conservative to white nationalist. I'd like to enter that into the record with me.
Without objection.
Patrick Crucis believed he was fulfilling Trump's wishes in El Paso attack, his attorneys said. Like to enter into the record?
Without objection.
Buffalo shooting, how far-right killers are radicalized online. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Evergreen high school shooters online activity reveals fascination with mass shootings, white supremacy. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Murder and extremism in the United States in 2024, a report by the Anti-Defamation League. I'd like to enter that into
Without
the record.
objection.
And the article, the report that was scrubbed from the DOJ just recently, National Institute of Justice Journal focusing on domestic radicalization, violent extremism, and terrorism. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
And lastly, the libertarian think tank Cato and their analysis on violent extremism and the right rising in extremist acts. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Just very quickly, Director Patel, thank you for being here, for your service to this country, and for the transparency that you have brought to the FBI and for the American people. Transparency that was absolutely non-existent in the Biden administration and FBI. I believe that you might have been asked earlier about whether you had had an opportunity to visit with any of Epstein's legal counsel. Were you asked that question earlier?
I think so.
Okay. One of the legal counsels or legal fixers for Mr. Epstein was Stacey Plaskett, the Democrat delegate to Congress from the Virgin Islands. So perhaps for those on the other side who are interested in talking to Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys, they could sure visit with one of their own colleagues. I want to focus on something that I think is very important that has not been addressed enough today, and that is related to the consequences of the Biden open border. One consequence of the Biden border crisis is the impact that it continues to have on our tribal communities, with the cartels taking advantage of our open borders, the Mexican drug cartels, by infiltrating our reservations and bringing violence, drugs, murder, trafficking, and more. Last year, when I questioned the Attorney General Garland about what the DOJ was doing to protect these communities, he simply deflected responsibility and said that Congress had not appropriated sufficient resources for them to be able to protect our tribal communities. Mr. Patel, what is the Trump FBI doing to counter the drug cartel infiltration and other violent crime targeting our Native American communities?
Thank you. It only took more than half of this proceeding to talk about one of the priorities that the FBI has, which is crimes on tribal lands. Every single crime that we have been talking about, whether it's child predators, human trafficking, narco traffickers, murder, they all happen on tribal lands as well. And I've said since the beginning, it is a priority, which is why we launched Operation Not Forgotten on tribal lands. And I'm the first FBI director to meet with the staff and tribal leaders here in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere, and invited them into my office and headquarters to see them, because I need engagement with tribal leadership, and I need our police and FBI agents to be engaging with tribal leadership. Otherwise, we're not going to break through. We have 1,900 Indian country cases open right now. We've got 600 indictments this year alone. We cannot forget tribal lands. Every single one of those people lives in the United States of America, and it is an absolute priority to protect them and their children just as it is anyone else.
So I think it's fair to say that what Mary Garland testified to, that the FBI and DOJ did not have the resources to address that. I think that that was an absolutely false statement. Would you agree with me?
It's a decision by him not to do so. That's not my decision.
At the end of August, the U.S. Attorney and FBI announced that nearly 100 personnel representing members of the Safe Trails Task Force operated near Wyoming's Wind River Reservation to assist with reducing drug trafficking and illegal guns. Director Patel, you have routinely stated that it is your mission to partner with and strengthen local and state law enforcement partners. How does the task force and other FBI efforts bring tribal law enforcement into this process?
The major problem with tribal lands is the sheer tyranny of geography and the amount of coverage that they have on land versus the personnel they have to do it. So what we've done is constantly surge resources to tribal lands across this country on a 30, 60, 90-day rotating basis, reporting back to us saying who needs more. And what we found is that most of these lands can be assisted by our counter-UAS program, our drone capabilities, and we're going to do it because what's happening is the Mexican drug cartels are literally flying overhead, dropping their cargo, their narcotics onto this land where no one's looking, and then it's being disseminated to children, to youth, to adults on that land, and killing them. And we got to stop it before it gets dropped off.
Well, and your testimony proves that the Biden administration did not lack the resources to address drug and violent crime in tribal communities or around the United States. It instead expended and wasted these resources investigating parents, Catholics, we now find out Turning Point USA, the RNC, and Republican organizations, rather than protecting our Native Americans by closing the border. Is that fair?
I think so.
Wonderful, thank you. And I do appreciate the work that you've done in this regard. I was previously the chairman of the subcommittee on Indian and Insular Affairs with the Natural Resources Committee, and safety and security on our reservations and for our tribal members has been one of our priorities, one of my priorities, and I very much appreciate the work that the FBI has done. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help you, and with that, I yield back.
I will, ma'am.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for coming in today, Mr. Patel. In the past few months, the country has experienced a string of horrific, high-profile attacks that have been motivated by racial hatred or political ideology. Shooter attacked the CDC headquarters, firing hundreds of rounds and killing a police officer. An arsonist set fire to the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro's residence, with the governor and his family actually inside. Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated earlier this year. Clark and Charlie Kirk was murdered last week. Bomb threats have been made against HBCUs and the DNC, and just the list goes on and on. I only have just a few minutes today, so I don't want to take a lot of time to go into all the countless and devastating violent crimes and incidents that have happened at our schools or on our streets and in our communities that have just been happening all year long. Mr. Patel, just yes or no, is this type of political violence ever acceptable in your eyes?
No.
I'm glad that we agree that these heinous acts designed to instill fear and division in our nation are never, ever acceptable, yet each of these incidents has recently taken place under your watch. The FBI's website states that protecting the United States from terrorist acts is the FBI's #1 priority, including from domestic terrorists. Is this still your #1 priority?
Domestic terrorism?
Preventing domestic terrorism.
Our #1 priorities are protecting the homeland and international terrorism and crushing violent crime, and domestic terrorism sort of interlays between both of those.
Okay, so, well, then I'm glad that you're giving us the right answer, but unfortunately, your actions kind of tell a different story. Earlier this year, you granted the ranks of the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Operations Section. This is the section of the FBI that is most directly responsible for addressing political violence in our country by preventing attacks from occurring and effectively responding to them if they do. The agents in this section are the ones who stopped an individual stockpiling weapons, who planned to attack schools and churches in Florida and seized bombs made by an ISIS sympathizer in New Orleans. And instead of ensuring that this section has all the resources that it needs at a time when its mission is critical, you fired its decorated veteran FBI agents who have served their country proudly under Republican and both Democratic presidents, and you scrapped the tools that they developed to fight domestic terrorism, including the National Domestic Terrorism Incident Database.
I mean, most of that is just not true. We have 1,700 current DT managed programs. We're up 300% in the amount of cases we brought against nihilistic, violent extremists, including 764, wishing to harm our children. The FBI and the men and women are getting after that problem set more than ever because I've unleashed them to do so. And any insinuation that these tragic occurrences across the country are somehow singularly my fault or disgusting because that watershed goes
Mr.
down to the
Patel,
men
I'm
and
going to
women at the
reclaim my time.
FBI,
Mr. Patel,
and
I'm
they
gonna
are not
reclaim my time.
responsible
Mr.
for it.
Chairman,
I'm
I'd
happy
like
to
to
work
enter
with
a
you
unanimous
to
consent-
get them what they
Gentlelady,
need.
Consent
gentlelady
request.
controls the time. Unanimous consent request. You'll state a request.
Thank you very much. Into the record, an article from Reuters titled FBI Scales Back Staffing, Tracking of Domestic Terrorism, Probes Sources Say. Thank you very much.
Without
I
objection.
appreciate that. So, Mr. Patel, and it isn't just the domestic terrorism operations section. Under your watch, agents are fully diverting their attention to these anti-immigrant and city takeover operations, leaving our children vulnerable to dangerous networks of online predators, both domestic and international. You pulled more than 120 FBI agents from their normal duties to operate sobriety checks and conduct traffic stops, exposing the FBI's fleet of unmarked cars and thereby making it harder for the FBI to combat violent criminal gangs, foreign intelligence services, and drug traffickers in the process.
That's simply not true. If we were not able to do two things at one time, how would we be
Patel, I
seizing
reclaim
record
my
amounts of
time. I reclaim my
fentanyl?
time.
23,000
Chairman, I'd like to
violent
enter
felons have
into
been
the
arrested.
Time belongs to the
Consent
gentlelady.
More than twice as many as
request.
last
Time belongs
year.
to the gentlelady from Georgia.
Thank you very much. And this request basically is, it is an article from Reuters which quotes law enforcement officers familiar with agents who once covered child exploitation cases but now focus on immigration child exclusive. Thousands of agents diverted to Trump immigration track down. Mr. Patel, in the short time I have left, your tenure as director of FBI has been somewhat problematic. Americans are left definitely less safe under your watch. You have gutted the FBI's ability to keep safe from domestic terrorism. You have sent FBI agents to conduct traffic stops and round up hardworking immigrants who pose no danger to public safety, people even President Trump referred to as good longtime workers. Your job is to protect and serve the American public.
Time to the
You have
gentlelady.
spent your time protecting heinous individuals and using the FBI to serve as a political circus. You at times have appeared unequipped,
Time
and
to
this
the
country
gentlelady has
deserves better, and
expired.
I yield.
Gentlelady yields
May I
back.
respond?
Sure can.
Simply put, what is it? Are we failing? If we're failing, how are we arresting 23,000 violent felons? Twice as many as this time last year. Are we failing? Because if we're failing, how are we seizing 1,500 kilograms of meth, 25% increase from last year? Are we failing? Because we captured 4 top 10 FBI most wanted from around the world in 7 months. That's more than the entirety of the last administration. Are we failing? Because we put 1,500 child predators in prison. Are we failing? Because we dismantled 300 human trafficking networks. Which is it? You don't like me, that's fine. But don't you dare disparage the men and women of the FBI that are producing record results in historic fashion to protect this country. They are kicking ass for America, and they're going to continue to do so.
And we appreciate your leadership. The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
When I was home recently, I met with the agents leading the Tampa office of the FBI, and I saw what they're focused on in my community: stopping drug traffickers, rescuing children from exploitation, fighting cybercrime, protecting us from acts of terrorism, foreign and domestic. And I know from my time as a federal prosecutor and a judge that this work by the Bureau doesn't make headlines, but it is happening every single day. At the top, accountability is necessary, transparency is critical, but today we've seen an effort not just to diminish, but to distort the work of Director Patel and the agents he leads. If we really care about transparency and about truth, then what we owe to the American people is this reality: that thousands of dedicated professionals at the FBI wake up every single day thinking not about themselves, but about this country, and keeping every single one of us and our children safe from harm. And Director Patel, I would like to hear from you the facts about what the FBI is doing in your efforts to fight crime. Director Patel, isn't it correct that since January 20th, 2025, the FBI has made over 25,000 immigration-related arrests, including 350 members of Tren de Aragua and 195 members of MS-13?
Those numbers are accurate. The Tren de Aragua numbers are up over 350% from the year before.
And during that same period, hasn't the FBI seized over 66,000 kilos of cocaine, 6,000 kilos of meth, and 1,500 kilos of fentanyl?
Not to be nitpicky, but it's 89,000 kilos of cocaine and 7,300 kilograms of meth.
And isn't it also true that the FBI Tampa Division's Panama Express Strike Force specifically seized nearly 67,000 kilos of cocaine valued at more than $1.6 billion from illicit maritime vessels?
One of our best operations out of the Port of Tampa, and I was down there in South Florida when Panex did their work.
Director Patel, since October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack, the FBI has been a co-leader of the Joint Task Force October 7th. Isn't it correct that this task force is actively working to bring justice for victims and to prevent terrorist infiltration at our borders?
Yes, ma'am.
Since January 20th, hasn't the FBI arrested 59 foreign intelligence operatives for spying or smuggling dangerous material into the United States?
Yes, we have, and that's on track to be more than 25% than ever before.
And the FBI has also been leading operations against major cyber threat actors, including those from Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Isn't that right?
A 17% increase from year to date last year.
Director Patel, the FBI's child exploitation task forces continue to investigate predators who target children online and across our communities. How significant is that threat today, and what results have you seen under your tenure in bringing these offenders to justice?
We have, under Operation Grayskull, dismantled dark web units that are operating online, not just in the United States, but across the world, to do our children harm. We have taken into custody more suspects than ever before on those who seek to harm our children. That is what the men and women of the FBI do, and that's what they're going to continue to do. Those are the real results when you let good cops be cops, and when you let us get on these platforms and expose them to the public and show them the harms of these predators on these online gaming systems and social media systems. And we need more help from Congress to allow us more authorities to do that work.
The FBI laboratory manages the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, which compares over 25 million DNA profiles and aids more than 125 investigations each day. Director Patel, why is this important to law enforcement nationwide?
All of law enforcement relies on our CJIS operation out of West Virginia. And what that does is allow 19,000 agencies to come in and say, hey, does this guy have a criminal history? Hey, is this an illegal firearm? Do we have a DNA hit like we did in these recent assassinations? That's what the FBI brings to bear, because local and state law enforcement agencies just don't have that capability, and we're doing it 24/7, 365. CJIS does not close for 1 minute.
In your testimony, you noted that the FBI has ongoing counterintelligence investigations into China, Iran, and Russia across all 55 field offices. Why is it essential to maintain that scope of coverage, and what success can you point to in disrupting nation-state actors?
Our biggest threats involving nation-state actors are the PRC, Russia, and China, and they are up 33%, 83%, and 60% respectively in arrests alone this year. Those nation-state actors wish to do harm in our infrastructure, our critical infrastructure system, our energy, our water supply, and also go after and target individuals and senior citizens and take their money through online pig butchering schemes, which we've exposed in Cambodia by way of the CCP. This is groundbreaking work that the American public should be seeing that their FBI is doing, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to report on it.
Thank you. Director Patel, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple.
Unanimous consent.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. In response to Mr. Mattel's making the remarks that, that maybe our colleagues are disparaging the men and women of the FBI, I'd like to enter the record 3 unanimous consent requests. One is entitled FBI Using Polygraphs to Test Officials' Loyalty. The second is Kash Patel knowingly broke law when firing top officials, lawsuit alleges, published by NBC. And the third is FBI forces out more leaders, including ex-director who fought Trump, demand for January 6 agents' names.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Gentlelady from Vermont's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Patel, thank you for being with us today. Appreciate your time. Let me say at the top, political violence should have no place in this country, and I strongly, unequivocally condemn the killing of Charlie Kirk last week. And this is exactly the kind of case that warrants a swift and thorough investigation by the FBI. What shouldn't be happening, however, is this administration's seeming attempt to exploit Mr. Kirk's death within minutes of this horrible, horrible assassination, dividing us even further without knowing enough about the killer's complicated, confused political ideology and the extent of his motivation. And this week, Vice President Vance claimed that this is, quote, an extremely destructive movement of left-wing extremism, and said that, quote, it's part of the reason why Charlie was killed. He pledged to go after organizations on the left. But Director Patel, it was just 3 months ago that Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota House Speaker and her husband, Mark, were shot to death in their home in the middle of the night by a self-identified right-wing extremist and Trump supporter. When that assassination happened, the FBI released a written statement denouncing the killings and pledging to hold the killer accountable. And I thank the Bureau for that. It was clear, concise, to the point. But when you compare that statement to the over 50 mentions of the Charlie Kirk killing and just 4 for the Hortmans on accounts affiliated with the FBI and your personal account, it appears to many Americans that you're valuing some lives more than others, and that's painful. And this is what I'm hearing from my constituents, so I just want to convey that to you. And the vice president didn't even call on right-wing organizations to tone down their rhetoric after that horrific killing in Minnesota. And he never once spoke about dismantling conservative institutions. This week, when the president was asked by a reporter about Speaker Hortman, he claimed he didn't even know who she was. One of the most high-profile assassinations of an elected official in recent memory, and the president claims to know nothing about it, hasn't even heard of it. It was absolutely devastating for her colleagues and for her family. And I think we all can agree in this room that we have to stop this political violence. So my first question to you is, Director Patel, what is your plan as director of the FBI to turn down the temperature, especially in light of the fact that it seems like members of the administration are reacting to political violence based on party affiliation? What's your plan?
I can only speak for myself and the FBI.
Course.
And what we are doing is, I think I mentioned earlier, we're following the money, because whatever attack you are describing, and they are all despicable, equally so, people need money to operate. People need money to conduct these attacks, to conduct these investigations. And so what we are doing is finding the people that supported this infrastructure system, because even when you say there's a lone, quote unquote, lone wolf actor, he's not truly a lone wolf actor. Something happened along the way.
I agree. And so can I just because we have such little time, are you making a commitment right now to follow where the evidence goes in investigating whether it's violence on the left or the right? Because over the last 10 years, when you look at the ideology, I want to follow up on what my colleague from California said. When you look at the data, you look at the Anti-Defamation League data, 96% of ideological motivated killings were committed by the right wing. When you look at the Institute of Justice report that she cited, it's 5 times the number that 5 times the number of far left extremist incidents are perpetrated by far right. And it's been reported, and she mentioned this, that as of September 12th, 2025, just 2 days after Charlie Kirk's killing, that the DOJ removed that report from the DOJ website. That's why Americans are concerned that there seems to be a separate system of justice, that if you are a Republican and you are attacked, you will get the full weight and authority of the FBI in this administration. But if you are somebody serving in the Minnesota State Legislature and you are assassinated in your home, that the response is different. And I think to ignore the threats from the right or try to do a both and when there are multiple instances when it's overwhelmingly coming from the right, this is a disservice, because Americans want to know that whoever they are, whatever their political affiliation, that the response is going to be the same, and it is going to be done with the same diligence. And I'm wondering if you will commit to me right now that you will be a voice right now standing up to those voices in the administration that are adding to the violent rhetoric right now. That's what I'm asking you. Will you commit to this?
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman can respond.
My voice will be through the investigations that the FBI conducts, and we will conduct them all lawfully and equally.
Can we expect in the future that your tweets in related to one killing will be the same level of concern?
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, sir. Director Patel, thank you for being here today, and most importantly, thank you for restoring trust and faith in the FBI, which has been severely eroded under the Biden administration. Thank you for your service and your continued service in this capacity. On April 7th, 2025, Charlie posted on X, "Assassination culture is spreading from the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55% say the same about Donald Trump. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy and set back. Whether losing an election or losing a court case justifies a maximally violent response, end quote. And unfortunately for Charlie, that reaction also came when they couldn't win a debate on a college campus. You cannot be intellectually honest and say that this problem is on both sides. It's not just what happened to President Trump, it's also what just happened to Charlie. And we've gotten to a point in America where violence is encouraged. We have a former president of the United States that opens up his campaign in 2019, that's Joe Biden, by saying that his opponent is a, quote, existential threat to this country. Houston, we have a problem. People that you disagree with are not existential threats. They are not Nazis. They are not fascist. They are not racist. They are not deplorable. They are not irredeemable. They are your fellow Americans who have a different perspective on how government should run and what government should look like. Whether or not we should have strong sovereign borders, whether or not we should have safe communities, whether or not we should have places to worship our God and not worry about being shot, whether or not we live in communities and cities that are not overwhelmed by drugs and crime, whether or not we have two genders, and whether or not we have common sense in our policies and our values. And people that believe these things are not existential threats. I happen to be one of these people that believes all of the above, and as someone that served this country in combat, I can assure you I am not an existential threat to this country because I swore to protect her. I also want to point out, how many cities have you seen burned to the ground since Charlie Kirk's death? 0. No summer of love, no riots, no nothing, no looting, no killing, none. We simply gathered and prayed for his soul, his family, and this country, because that's exactly what we represent. And while we might be angry, this righteous anger will carry on Charlie's message and legacy. I want everybody to know something very simple. Charlie is not dead because of what he said. He is dead because people listened. My time is limited, so I have a few questions for you, sir. And again, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate your time and your service. In your experience in the FBI, have you noticed a precipitous rise in political violence and other associated crimes that you have been investigating so far this year? And if so, is this trend in motive left-wing or right-wing violence?
I can always speak generally, sir. There is too much political violence, and it has been a precipitous rise on too many fronts.
How do we solve this?
We solve this by giving the FBI more authorities to go into and work with the private sector. There are too many online platforms. There are too many social media platforms. There are too many gaming platforms. There are too many places for people from America and around the world to get together without their parents knowing anything about it, without their school teachers knowing anything about it, and infesting the minds of our children and infecting them with radical ideology, and that is the root cause of these problems, and we must tackle it. It is not a 1950s America anymore. In 2025, the cyberspace needs to be tackled.
Thank you. Switching gears, when your predecessor sat right there in that seat a couple of years, last year in a committee hearing, I asked him a very detailed question about Matthew Thomas Crooks, the shooter responsible for the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. I did get an answer from Chris Wray that day, and I submitted written questions to the FBI and into the record of this committee, and I want to resubmit those questions today because I think we are still awaiting answers to those questions. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit some for the record, please. I'd like to ask you, sir, and the FBI, under your leadership, would you please respond to these questions, and can you commit to doing that?
As soon as the trial's over.
Thank you very much. I will end with this. Charlie Kirk is not dead because of what he said. Charlie Kirk is dead because people listened. He set up a tent that said, "Prove me wrong," and exercised his First Amendment right. That's all he did. And we will continue to do so in this country in order to preserve this constitutional republic. And with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I want to caution my colleagues on, one-sided violence in this country. We just heard that there were no riots on the right. We're literally sitting in the building where there was a giant riot by supporters of the president, the right. We also heard that only leftists, have said that Trump is a Nazi. In 2016, the current vice president of the United States said, Trump is either a cynical asshole or he's America's Hitler. And so this is the problem. I don't want to have to say this garbage, but you want me to sit here and get painted with one brush, the whole left. No, there are extremes on the left, and there are extremes on the right. And we collectively should tackle that. But to come here and just look at us and say we all support what's going on in the extremes is why we can't solve anything in this building. Director, let me say first, thank you for being here, and my condolences on the loss of your friend. And I'm happy to hear that you want to do more on the social media platforms. It's crazy what's going on the social media platforms. There are so many conspiracy theories on what's going on with Charlie Kirk. Israel assassinated him, right? There are conspiracy theories about your personal social life all day. It is totally rampant. Big names on the right, Candace Owens, right? Talking about how what's been released as far as the dialogue between the perpetrator and his roommate is manufactured by the FBI, manufactured by the administration. It is totally rampant, allowing foreign governments to just perpetrate these platforms, all of these bots, all of the time to weaponize Americans. You see what's going on here? This is a byproduct of all of that. What's going on in the streets is a byproduct of all of that. What's happening is you see people celebrate Luigi Mangione is a byproduct of all of that. And so if we want to do something, then we should talk about Section 230. We should talk about how we're going to make sure that we don't let foreign governments poison our children's mind. And so I will work with you on that, Director.
I'll work with you on 230 any day.
No problem. So now, that was the good part. I want to take your attention back a second, okay? Breaking news. Kash Patel is nominated to be the FBI director. Dan Bongino is nominated to be the number 2 at the FBI. MAGA celebrates, rejoices, bells are ringing out. The team, Patel, Bongino, that sought out every podcast microphone to talk about the Epstein list. The names are finally going to get released. It begins. They produce white binders. Phase 1 with the podcasters. This is not actually one of them, of course. I made this. Your name's on it, right? And the names are going to come out. Pam Bondi says the list is on her desk. Then a memo comes out all of a sudden and says, there's no list. Oh, no phase 2. Phase 2 binders never happen. You said the conspiracy theories around Epstein just aren't true. They never have been. And yesterday, in an answer to Senator Kennedy, you said the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. So according to your testimony yesterday and in this committee, according to the evidence the FBI has, the number of names on the list are 0.
No,
zero.
The index has been released, and the number of people involved in that trafficking operation were charged in 2018.
Other than Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, your testimony in the Senate and here is that according to the evidence you have, the number of other names is 0.
That were charged based on credible evidence.
Well, who are the other names? Give me the other names that weren't charged.
We are not releasing the names of anyone because the Department of Justice never does that, of anyone that didn't have any credible information to attack them.
Let me move forward. The president has, you've seen the picture of the woman's body with the writing and the president's signature. The president says that's not his, okay? President says it's not his. The Republican colleagues say it's not his. The administration say it's not his. Will you be opening up an investigation into the Epstein estate for putting out a fake document with the president's signature linking him to the world's largest pedophile ring? Will you be opening that investigation into that?
On what basis?
On what basis? They literally put out a fake document, according to the president, with a fake signature. It's a forgery. of the President of the United States signature. That's the basis.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay, I look forward to that investigation. Am I over? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your diligence.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Director Patel, as you know, my state, California, is home to the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history, known as California High-Speed Rail, although the name is probably a misnomer. Earlier this year, I joined your counterpart at the Department of Transportation, Sean Duffy, doing a compliance review of the federal money the state has received, and the outcome was that the state has not complied with the terms of its billions of dollars in funding because it hasn't actually built anything. And so that federal funding has now been cut off, but a lot of us in California still have questions as to where all the money went. We're 17 years in to this project, and absolutely nothing has been built. Not a single bit of track has been laid. There are no stations. There are no passengers. And the plan initially was to have the whole thing, LA to San Francisco, done by 2020 at a cost of $33 billion. Yet here we are in 2025. Nothing has been built. And according to the New York Times, the project won't even be completed this century, and the total cost is now estimated to be over $130 billion. So I just wanted to ask you, do you think this is something that bears scrutiny, or can you confirm whether there's any kind of investigation going on at the FBI?
The FBI certainly can't investigate incompetence, but the FBI certainly can investigate and does investigate waste, fraud, and abuse. And so if we have any information that indicates that that happened in this situation or anything else, we'll look at it.
Thank you very much. We've also, been talking some today about the issues that occurred at the border during the Biden administration. And you might not agree with your predecessor on everything, but you probably would agree with some of the statements he made in testimony before this and other committees, raising alarms about the risk of terrorism from illegal border crossings. Since becoming director, have you gotten some insight into how well calibrated those warnings were, and what is the status of that risk now?
Since becoming director, there's been a sharp decrease of border crossings for known or suspected terrorists from the southern border. But unfortunately, there has been a sharp increase of known or suspected terrorists entering through our northern border. And so what I'm trying to do is work with our northern border states and our interagency to tackle that problem. But it is an absolutely massive border that can't physically be sealed. So we're going to have to get creative and put more resources into that.
And in a similar vein, there were over 500,000 unaccompanied children that crossed the southern border during the Biden administration. As we know, many were trafficked either through forced labor or sex trafficking. Do you have any insight as to what the scale of that problem was and how have things changed over the last several months?
Other than what you outlined in terms of how it was described, I don't have any additional details. In terms of how many people are being trafficked into this country, especially unaccompanied missing children, that number has drastically reduced because the coyotes that smuggle these children for their criminal activity are the same ones that smuggle in narcotics, or the same one that traffic older age women. They're all interconnected, and because of the sealing of the southern border by this administration, that has come to a near halt.
That is a very important point, that we have seen far fewer victims of human trafficking because we've finally prioritized border security. And by the way, you have children who are getting rescued because of the immigration enforcement activities that unfortunately some politicians in my state are trying to stop, thereby stopping those kids from getting rescued. We've seen, of course, a substantial reduction in crime here in Washington, D.C. since the FBI and the National Guard got involved. I'm kind of asking you to state the obvious here, but what is the mechanism there? Why have we seen a reduction of crime when D.C. has had such a huge crime problem for years, and then almost overnight we see such a big difference?
Because of the dedication and resources from President Trump's administration to utilize all federal, state, and local assets in a heavily crime-ridden area. I mean, if we did not have a crime-ridden area, then homicides, carjackings, and gun violence would not be dropping by 40, 50, 60%. And when you allow the police, the MPD, to work with federal authorities and allow the National Guard to set up your perimeter, this is what you can do in a few short weeks. And we at the FBI, under Operation Summer Heat, have set those Phase 01 operations in motion 4 months ago, quietly at the direction of President Trump. So we are scattered across cities across this country doing just that. But we're going to need more help to complete the job.
Yeah, in too many places in this country, crime has just been treated as sort of a norm, that this is the way things have to be. What's happened in D.C. shows that is not the case if we have the right policies and the right priorities. Finally, this is tragically the second time in as many years that we've had an FBI director here following either an assassination or an assassination attempt. And so since there's been some time now since from the attempted assassination on President Trump at Butler, would you say that the public's understanding of what took place on that day is fairly consistent with all of the facts as you know them, or do you believe there's still material facts that have not been made public or are not fully understood by the public?
No, I think it's fairly consistent.
Thank you. I yield.
Gentleman yields back. The lady from Texas is recognized.
Man, oh man, there has been so much today, and I truly don't know where to start. So I'm just going to make sure that we start off with a few facts. So a couple of facts that we need to make clear for everyone is that, number one, Director Christopher Wray, when he was appointed to be the head of the FBI, was appointed by Donald Trump. Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that
That's
you are
false.
the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I
Still
want to go
false.
through is to talk about why you are a failure and why, honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye. I know that you got a little upset and you put on your show for your boss because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, we're happy because now we feel safe. I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues. And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one, I have a couple of UCs. Kim Buck, one of multiple Republicans receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people. And even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously as it relates to catching somebody